Trump's tariff magic is turning into a tariff migraine. Billions of tariff dollars may have to be refunded. Runaway inflation and economic setbacks would drop on the US like a hammer. Trump's tariff gamble is on the edge of a giant catastrophe, and Trump knows it. That is why he is panicking and urging the US Supreme Court to save the day. So what is happening? Why is the legality of Trump's tariffs being challenged? How does he justify his tariffs on India in court? And what's next for the US economy if his tariff gamble fails? This is Shubhangi Sharma and you're watching Fine Point. Let's dive in. Trump's tariff reign is close to a dramatic collapse. Everything Trump has been fighting for, with countries around the world using the tariff wand recklessly, has now come to a dangerous edge. Because that tariff wand may not survive the legal test, and the effects could be devastating. As per an estimate, an amount larger than $200 billion collected in tariffs would have to be refunded. Others, like the Associated Press, put this number at $72 billion. Either way, this is a massive disaster in waiting. So what's happened? A federal appeals court has just dealt a serious, possibly fatal blow to the legal foundation of Donald Trump's global tariff regime. In a 7-4 decision, the Federal Court of Appeals ruled that the administration overstepped its authority when it used the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or the IEEPA, to levy sweeping import duties. And the White House's catch-all tariff programs exceeded the scope of statutory authority. The court also emphasized that the Constitution assigns tariff-setting power solely to the Congress. For now, the court has stayed its own mandate, so the tariffs remain in place, but the legal ground beneath them has cracked. And here's the face behind that setback. This is Neil Katyal. He is the former US Solicitor General, and he represents a bunch of businesses and states suing the White House. Their pitch resonated. Tariffs are taxes. Taxes require Congress, and the IEEPA is not just a magic wand. So what does this mean? Trump's use of national emergency and national security narratives to push tariffs are now under legal scrutiny. The ultimate question is if the president can get away with wielding such sweeping powers without congressional approval. This has not happened in the last 200 years. The last president to try something similar was Richard Nixon about 5 decades ago, and Congress clipped his wings soon after. So how is Trump reacting to this? Well, he's panicking and warning of a catastrophe. His response was immediate and dramatic. If the tariffs go, America faces the brink of an economic catastrophe. It would be impossible to pay back or recover these giant sums of money and honor, said the president. From the Oval Office, Trump claimed, and I quote, "We made a deal with the European Union where they're paying us almost $1 trillion. I guess we'd have to unwind them." Trump also warned that the United States would, and I quote, "suffer so greatly if we don't win that case." His administration has raced to the Supreme Court, asking for an expedited hearing on this. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent filed statements underscoring the same theme. Bessent has warned of a dangerous diplomatic embarrassment, which will interrupt ongoing negotiations and pose risks of retaliation from other countries if the courts pull the rug now. Meanwhile, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick wrote that a ruling against Trump's tariffs would cause irreparable harm to the US and risk unwinding trade deals that Trump has already announced, such as those with the European Union, the UK, and Japan. But here's the fun part. Howard Lutnick's sons, leading a subsidiary of investment bank Cantor Fitzgerald, have just set up a way to bet against the tariffs. So if the tariffs are struck down, they make a giant profit. How interesting. But back to the issue. What is the Trump team so afraid of? Firstly, behind the rush is a stark number. The government has taken in tens of billions in duties under these emergency tariffs, money that may need to be refunded if the policy dies in court. As I said, the Associated Press pegs the haul from the major IEEPA-based tariffs at $72 billion, but the number could be as high as $200 billion as per other reports. Bottom line, if the tariffs are invalidated and refunds are ordered, the operational and fiscal headache for the Treasury and Customs would be extraordinary. Trump acknowledged that the court's decision, if upheld by the Supreme Court, could result in the US Treasury having to give back tariff revenue collected. That would be a disaster of epic scale. It could cause a surge in government borrowing and runaway inflation. Secondly, the optics would be devastating, and it would certainly cause a loss of leverage in live negotiations and unravel existing deals. What that means is not only would ongoing negotiations change course, but countries like the EU or Japan would revisit their deals and take back the concessions they made for Trump. This may also lead to retaliation from countries, as admitted by Scott Bessent himself. The US is already in violation of its World Trade Organization commitments, and this might be the final hammer. Moreover, the plaintiffs will seek injunctions against other possible workarounds that could be used by Trump as emergency powers. The Supreme Court could declare that any such measures in the future would need clear congressional approval. In the case of India, Trump has told the Supreme Court that he recently authorized tariffs against India for purchasing Russian energy products to deal with a, and I quote, pre-existing national emergency regarding Russia's war in Ukraine as a crucial aspect of the USA's push for peace in that war-torn country. That stands on shaky grounds, and it remains to be seen how the courts see it. But don't hold your breath just yet, as Trump has ways to survive this. He has already urged the courts to cooperate in a sense, since the economic disaster would not be in the USA's interests. He also has other statutes to reorder his tariffs, like the Section 232 for national security and Section 301 for unfair trade. However, these need prior investigations and studies, and they don't do well at the World Trade Organization. Moreover, the constitutional point, the perceived illegality of his moves, could weaken his case for most tariffs in the eyes of other countries which have already mapped retaliation scenarios and voiced exasperation with Washington's tariff brinkmanship. So even if Trump gets away for now, the policy's loss of credibility will be debilitating. This means that Trump's tariff party could be over sooner than later.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.